How many novels have you read that heteronormativity has ruined for you?
Well, all of Throne of Glass.
Yeah, that's one of the worst ones.
Yeah, and we can talk about that too.
I'm sorry I ruined Throne of Glass for you.
You've ruined how many things for me?
What else?
I'm kidding.
Name one other thing.
You know I'm kidding. Hi friends. Welcome back to the InkGuild podcast. I'm Dean, joined today by Alex. This is where you can say hello.
Hello.
Oh, look at that. You've got a new microphone. Yeah, so I was teasing Alex.
Are we really doing this?
Yeah, just for a bit. So yeah, I was teasing Alex about this early on, but yeah, look at that. She has like her mic quality stepped up. Or like stepped up as in she remembered that she had the headset that she's wearing right now.
Listen.
All right. Well, today's topic, everyone, is heteronormativity in storytelling. For those of you who don't know what heteronormativity is, what?
I take it the delay hasn't been fixed.
No, I don't think so. Fantastic. All right. So for everyone that isn't aware of what that word means, heteronormativity is the belief that heterosexuality, predicated on the gender binary, is the default, preferred, or normal mode of sexual orientation. It assumes that sexual and marital relations are most fitting between people of opposite sex. And while that in itself could be a whole podcast episode, or it could even be a whole podcast series on why that is dumb. Alex and I are going to talk about how it impacts fiction and storytelling, because this is a creative writing podcast. So
that's what we do.
Hey. So, I think what I wanted to first talk about with this topic is how does it really impact storytelling, and I think one of the most obvious ones, I think one of the most obvious ways it impacts storytelling is through relationships. I think, yeah. So I think specifically I wanted to look at YA first, because YA has very, 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 very bad. What am I trying to say? Like it's
definitely the worst culprit of heteronormativity of all the genres I've read. It has it the worst.
Yeah, it dips into straight couples a lot more than some people would think. Like between the main characters, side characters, it's just too much, really. Like there isn't a diversity with, I guess, sexual orientations and especially sexual relationships in YA. Like it's almost exclusively just straight couples, right? A man and a woman, or in this case, or in some cases,
a man and a girl.
Yeah.
Sometimes a boy and a girl. Often a man and a girl. That's a lot more common than you'd think.
Yeah. So, I guess as a talking point, we can kind of look at Throne of Glass, which is a series that we here on the InkGuild podcast have famously shat on, jokingly, obviously. But yeah, I think ever since, like, I knew for a while, even before starting the podcast, that like, man, a lot of these couples end up being straight anyway. I wish that there was some more diversity there. And I think after Alex has kind of put the label on it as forced heteronormativity, I'm like, oh shit. yeah, what the hell? Why is there no like? Why is there not enough diversity? So I guess yeah, let's just talk about the Throne of Glass series for a while and how that is very heteronormative.
Yeah, I think, and like, I want to say that in my opinion, heteronormativity goes beyond the like sexuality of the characters and like the relationships, and it also goes into forced relationships in a story, which like Throne of Glass is really bad for. There are other authors that are also really bad for it, where it's like every single character in the story has to end up with someone at the end of the story. Like everyone has to be in a relationship.
Mm-hmm. And most
Um,
typically, it would be a straight relationship.
yeah, almost always. Like I don't think Throne of Glass has any exceptions that I'm aware of. Um,
Yeah.
you can correct me if I'm wrong though, because I haven't read the last book yet.
Mm, I remember from the last book that they were teasing Dorian and Fenris. So like they had a bit of they had like a small bit of chemistry here and there, but it like I don't think that was really going to go anywhere. Knowing how developed or knowing how Sarah J. Maas has developed Manon and Dorian since Queen of Shadows. So
Since the book before the last book.
yeah, oh yeah, Empire of Storms was definitely the benchmark. Like yeah, no, Dorian is gonna be fucking Manon until he dies.
That was we need to talk about Dorian and Manon. they are they are a good case of heteronormativity, I think.
I think so too. Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about them. Um,
Okay.
Sina, where do we start?
Okay, here's the thing. When I was getting into Throne of Glass, like the first time I met Manon, she she had like this thing going on with Elide, right? Elide is one of the other female characters in the book.
I love a lead.
In
Yeah.
the books. She's such a good character. Both of them are good characters. They're like two of the best characters
Mm-hmm.
in the books. Um, and they kind of had this like thing going on, like kind of like a will they won't they kind of thing that like looking back on, I don't know if it was intentional, but if it was, I think that's literally queer baiting on Sarah J. Maas's part because it
Oh my
has that
god, do
very
you
much.
think?
I don't know if it was intentional, but if it was, I mean, it's definitely queer baiting.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't say for certain, but it wouldn't surprise me also, if
Yeah.
I'm being honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember Queen of Shadows, like how they had introduced, like how they had developed Man. I keep saying Manon, even though I know it's Man on. So I guess until someone really says it, otherwise I'm just gonna keep saying it. But anyway, yeah, Manon and the lead had a great relationship forming during Queen of Shadows, and like I could definitely if not for a romantic relationship, they definitely had a really nice, like they really had good platonic chemistry that
They did.
yeah, that I think for me personally, I didn't ever really envision Menon having like romantic chemistry, let alone sexual chemistry with any other character in the book, just because she was so outstanding in her own way. Like she's
Yeah.
definitely I don't want to say she's the femme fatale type because like is she the femme fatale type?
She's not. Okay, here's the thing. I would argue in like the first few books we meet her, no, and then as soon as the thing with her and Dorian starts happening, then kind of yes, because then she becomes a much more sexual character, and I definitely associate femme fatale type characters with being very sexual.
Okay. Yeah, I do too. That's why I was asking. So, yeah, so when we first meet Menon in Airfire and Queen of Shadows, she is just this like she just has this badass aura around her that she's pretty much untouchable by both like man or woman. And
Especially men.
yeah, especially men. Like her
Like,
introduction
like,
in the book is literally just killing a bunch of fucking men.
yeah.
So,
And then, like, I mean, like we don't see her interact with a lot of like humans before that point, but
Mm-hmm.
she does have her family with like the coven or like the witches. I don't think they're called a coven, like her
The 13.
13 or
Yeah.
whatever. And like because the witches are women in the books, right? They're all women, I think.
Yeah, they're all women.
Yeah, it's been a while. But yeah, like they're all women. So you see her interact with like them a lot. And she definitely has this like I'm better than you kind of aura, which I
Mm-hmm.
mean fair in her case. But like yeah, she has this distaste for men throughout like the first two books.
Mm-hmm.
And then in I don't even know what book it is. The last one that I read, that isn't the last book. When she and Dorian kind of start becoming a thing, out of nowhere, all of a sudden she seems really interested in him,
Mm-hmm.
and like
Which I don't really understand why Manon would be like. I guess tying into like the heteronormative conversation, it kind of means that they were going to work out and like, they were going to start working out from there. But from a storytelling perspective, I can understand why Dorian was interested, because in Queen
yeah,
of Shadows, like he was obvious, like he was possessed by the Valg, and then suddenly with Manon being so badass that it literally terrified a fucking Valg, I'm like, okay, I can see why Dorian would be thankful and probably even interested, but I don't see why Manon was.
and yeah, see, this was I've gone on many a rant about this to anyone who will listen, but I think the thing is, I think Manon and Dorian could have worked as a couple if she had built it properly, but I don't think she built it properly because like
Mm-hmm.
I'm just, yeah. Basically, you have these two characters who are both in like really shitty situations. Both of them have had their lives basically destroyed. Spoilers for all of Throne of Glass, by the way. But like, because what Dorian just found out that his dad has been possessed or something for like his whole life. Also, his dad just died. His like home got destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
He was literally just possessed by this thing, and killed a bunch of people while he was possessed and did a bunch of awful things. And now he's escaped from that and has to like live with those consequences. So he's in a really terrible state of mind. And then you
Mm-hmm.
have Manon, who's just found out that her parentage has been lied to, like her grandmother, I think, like lied to her about her parentage.
Yeah.
She was like kicked out of like the witch thing
Yeah,
group
she was damn
people.
near killed for that.
Yeah, she was almost killed. She just managed to escape. She doesn't know if any of her friends or the people who care about her are alive. She's just been captured by a group of people that she had previously been working against.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like from like an arc perspective, they're kind of in similar states of mind in that both of them have just had like a rough go at it recently.
Mm-hmm.
And I can if I think if what Sarah J. Maas had done at this point was have them kind of find comfort in each other and be like, oh, you're someone who's also like been through some really hard stuff recently. And they like Dorian finds himself drawn to her for whatever reason, and they start talking and being like, "Oh, you're actually pretty cool," and like start working through their issues. I think if she had built the relationship that way, I would have liked it. But instead, what she did is Dorian comes in, all of a sudden Manon's like a submissive like meek little woman who's like, "Oh, touch me." And he's all of a sudden like really like dominant, like, "Yeah, I will touch you." And it's really weird and it's really out of character for both of them.
Yeah,
And it comes out of nowhere.
it really does, to be honest. Like I can kind of, and okay, look, just for everyone listening, we are not, I personally, I don't intentionally hate Sarah J. Maas for this. I love her. She's one of my favorite authors, and I love the Throne of Glass series. I just thought I'd put that out there. But I can understand that. Like, I can definitely understand where you're coming from, Alex. It really does come out of nowhere. And even when they, like, even when I could see in at least Empire of Storms that they were trying to develop something, I think it was all either way too quick or not given enough time. Because the thing is, with Empire of Storms, um they weren't just balancing Aylin's perspective, who's obviously the main character, but they were balancing Dorian's perspective, Rowan's perspective, Lorcan and Elid's perspective. Having the or like developing and I'm not saying that developing the relationship between Manon and Dorian should have been its own book, but I feel like it really should have just been given more time.
I
because
agree.
because yeah, they were given how much, like, in terms of like novel length to work out, and it all just felt too quick.
I think if I remember correctly, they had sort of met like when this first like sexual encounter between them happened, that was like their third meeting or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like they met once when Dorian was possessed, which I don't even know if I can count as a meeting because Dorian was possessed. And
Mm-hmm.
then like she didn't she like attack his castle or something, and then she
Yeah,
was captured by them, and that was like their third time meeting, and all of a sudden they're like super into each other, and like
which I don't
really,
understand.
yeah, yeah,
Like, it's too sudden.
it was, yeah. I'm like, did a whole bunch of like relationship building happen off screen?
Yeah, like it's cool to develop their relationship. It's just I don't think that in that third encounter, like you say, I don't think that should have been the click for it. I think probably like it's nice to introduce the moment, because I remember that Manon essentially goes there early to stop or to, like, warn Dorian, and I can understand. Again, I can understand why. I can understand why Manon would be, or why Dorian would be interested in Manon at that point, because she's essentially saving his life. But what, like, how is it that Manon suddenly starts liking him?
I have no idea.
Like,
Also,
exactly.
I think I missed this in my like overview of what had happened to them before this earlier, but didn't Dorian literally was like aiding someone before he got possessed, and she got killed like right before he was possessed, and then he was possessed for a long time, and then when he comes back, I'm like, is he even over that?
Yeah, yeah. I remember in Air of Fire there was
What was her
um
name? Like Sorsha or something?
Sorsha. Yeah, I loved her. She was a great character
She was a
for
great
the
character.
limited screen time that, or for the limited, like, word length. I say screen time for movies, but like I don't know for a thing. But yeah,
People know what you mean.
yeah. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's
Another great character of color that got screwed over by dying too early.
mm-hmm. But yeah, that's I think that's the one that stands out the most to me. And I think lately, like, I was completely down for Manon and Dorian from a fan perspective, because when I was reading it I was like, oh shit, this is sweet. But I can't exclude the fact that it really just came too quickly. And I think that was
Yeah.
just for the purposes of, like, oh shit, a straight relationship, or another relationship that kind of happened too quickly. I just
Yeah. And
repeated myself.
here's the thing though, because like I I was never actually like into that relationship
Mm-hmm.
when I was reading the books, because again I felt like it came too quickly, and I felt like there was this like man in a lead thing kind of going on at the side that was just kind of abandoned at some point. Um, but I feel like I could have come to appreciate them as a couple if they had been developed properly, and I
Oh
just
yeah,
feel like they
definitely.
weren't developed properly, and as a result I just cannot like the I'm trying to think of the right word. I just like I couldn't get into the relationship because I just felt like it wasn't developed properly. And
Mm-hmm.
that I think is a big problem with heteronormativity, is that like a lot of times, especially in YA like novels, the relationships are very rushed, and they're very like intensely sexual from like an early like point.
Mm-hmm.
And and yeah, I just they're underdeveloped, and so I can't, as a result I just feel like they're not healthy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so moving on to another example that I want to talk about with YA, there's a book series that I don't know if you might have read it, but it's the Shatter Me series.
I have not read them. I think I was told to avoid them by someone because they weren't that good.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I like them, or at least I like what I've read of them. So I've read the first 3 books, and wow. I can say this. I love I really like the protagonist. I was about to say I love the protagonist, but like, her journey kind of changes eventually, so I don't want to say I love her completely, but like Juliet Ferrars is a pretty good protagonist, but the relationship that she has with the 2 men involved happens way too fucking quick. And
Yeah.
we're going off and you're going off of like how a lot of YA relationships typically like typically rush to like super intimate things early on. And yeah, that's definitely the case with the Shatter Me series, because what I think in the first book there's already a love triangle, which we've all stated that we hate, or at least I've stated multiple times that I hate so much. But with so you have the 3 characters: Juliet, um, Aaron Warner, who at the current time is just called Warner, and then Adam. And the whole thing is, this first book is pushing towards Juliet and Adam. And spoilers if it's already not too late, but like um Juliet and Adam happen so fast, like alarmingly quickly. They um they basically start liking each other the second that they realize that they had, or that they recognized each other from childhood. And then from there it's like, oh, he must have been the one all that time, or like thing, he must have been the one that believed in me or something. And I'm like, why? This is so
If we
fast.
That's funny. If we want to go off like similar things, I think Cassandra Clare's first series,
Oh, we should talk
The
about
Mortal
Cassandra Clare, yeah?
Instruments, we should talk about because Cassandra Clare is not as bad as Sarah J. Maas when it comes to heteronormativity, but she's still pretty bad about it.
Mm-hmm.
But the first book in The Mortal Instruments, which is called City of Bones,
City
I
of Bones,
think.
yeah.
That's the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It takes place over the course of like a single week. And by the end of it, at the end of the book, Jace and Clary find out, spoiler alert, don't read these books, but spoiler alert. At the end of the first book, Jace and Clary find out that they're siblings. Further spoiler alert, they're not actually siblings. Um, but then like the second book goes on to like make a huge deal about this and about how it's so hard for them to keep their hands off each other because they're just so in love. And the whole time I'm reading this thinking they met like a week before they found out they were siblings, and now they're like so desperately in love that they're basically unhealthily codependent on each other.
Yeah.
Way to paint healthy relationships for the sake of drama, Cece.
Oh my god, yeah, I completely forgot. It's been so long since I read The Mortal Instruments, because I think somewhere around what is it? Somewhere around City of Glass? That's where I
I
stopped?
think that's the third one.
Yeah, I think that's the third one,
City
yeah.
of Bones, City of Ashes, City of Glass. Then there's the other three that I don't remember the names of at all. One of
It,
them City of Fallen Angels, and I think City of Lost Souls or something.
yeah. I don't remember, but yeah, definitely. I was about to talk about, like, I was wanting to touch on that because like that's a big series. And you know, I remember Jason Clary, like, for
Yeah.
the sake of their relationship, it had been developed throughout the book. It's just taken so many twists and turns throughout the series that, would that tie into like how, I don't know. I think for me personally it's just kind of, weird
It's they
to keep
like
changing
the
the
first
dynamic
book.
like that.
I mean, here's the thing. where like I'll give her credit for this is like relationships are going to change over time. But I just think it's kind of ridiculous for them to be heartbroken about finding out that they're siblings and their love is forbidden after knowing each other for a week.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm sorry. I don't believe in love at first sight. Not really. Not to that extent. There's no way that they're like ride or die for each other after knowing each other for a week.
Mm-hmm. So I guess um let's look at another example before I tie it back into our main conversation. So like what would be does the Grishaverse have any examples? Because I only read Six of Crows and um
I'm going to say
because I like Kaz and
um
Inej's relationship. I found that was pretty well
Kaz and
developed.
Inej were written really, really well in my opinion.
Yeah,
Um
like I
and
don't
we
think it
don't
was
really
rushed.
see.
Yeah, I don't think it
No,
was
it
rushed to the
was
extent.
not. It was not rushed at all. And I mean, like, it is a straight couple, but I feel like
Yeah, but there's a difference
they're
between you know
yeah. It
like
doesn't it's not heteronormative, I think, because there's kind of
yeah.
like a mutual pining there, but also like a mutual hesitance because Kaz has his whole skin thing where like
Mhm.
he doesn't like touching people's skin, and Inej has her history of like sexual abuse basically, where like
Mhm.
both of them are aware of each other's boundaries and neither of them want to push it. And like even by the end of the book, like I don't even remember, did they even kiss?
I don't remember.
I like I don't know if they did. Like they had the, like by the end of the book you're like, okay, they're together, but they weren't forced into like a very sexual relationship super quickly. And they also have like a history that goes back beyond the start of the first book as well that I think um that also helps it.
Mhm.
Um if we want to talk about like her first series, I think there is a little bit of the heteronormativity there. You have a little bit of a sort of love triangle going on, except, she has three men who are interested in her instead of just two. Um, and yeah, by the end of it. But again, in that case, like all of the relationships that are kind of developed, like the three different men that are interested in her, I feel like none of them seem to come out of nowhere for me. Because you have the main character's name is Alina, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that. And then you have Mal, you have the Darkling, and then you have Nikolai, who are interested in her. For Mal, they're like childhood friends. And I'm a sucker for a good childhood friends to lovers story. For I am, okay? Don't
I'm
judge
not I'm
me.
not judging. I'm not judging.
Um, then you have the Darkling who's interested in her for her magic, basically, and he's like not a good dude. So you're kind of like, yeah, okay, he wants her because so they can be a power couple, basically. Um, and then you have Nikolai, who's a prince, and he's also kind of interested in her for her magic, but I always felt like he was also interested in her as a person. And he was there, like, willing to protect her, essentially, because, people would always be vying after her incredible magic and stuff.
Mhm.
Um, so in that case, I'm kind of like I feel like there is a little bit of the heteronormativity going on, but I don't think it's nearly as bad as some other examples.
Yeah. So I guess to tie it back into what we've been talking about, like how does heteronormativity impact storytelling? It seems like there's a consensus that you're kind of bringing two characters together that either shouldn't be brought together or like need more time to be well developed, because then it falls into a lot of because then it falls into into a very familiar pattern of like these two characters being very very interested in each other way too quickly, or
Hmm.
built on a very poor foundation, just for the sake of what exactly, like for the sake of having another relationship in the book, or maybe having another ship for people to to sail on, or like
let me say something to any authors or writers that are listening to this. No matter how many relationships you put into your books, people will always ship every single possible combination of characters together, and there is nothing you can do about it.
Yeah,
I
so
promise you. Even the most absurd ships, you're probably thinking of two of your characters right now that are so like totally wrong for each other and going, there's no way anyone would ever ship this. You are wrong, and I am telling you that there is someone in the world who ships those two characters.
yeah. And like it's even funny then because going back to Throne of Glass, that's what a lot of I don't know if I can really confirm this, but I know that there was a small percentage of people before Manon and Dorian even became a thing that they wanted Manon and Dorian.
Yeah, they did.
And
That
look at
was
that.
a thing.
Yeah, and look at that. It just happened a little bit too quickly.
Yeah.
So I guess let's look at. So we've already looked at some of the examples. So why don't we break down really like what it takes to, I guess, build a proper relationship? And keep in mind, like just because we're saying that heteronormativity so far has been bad, that doesn't mean like any straight relationship in like in fiction is terrible. It just needs to be a thing. We're just now going to look at how it can be fixed.
Yeah.
So I think the most obvious one is to take time with it.
If you're Yeah, I agree. If your characters met a week ago, um, they're not going to be like so head over heels in love with each other that they'll never love again, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think putting that, because that's like a really, really common trope in YA novels. And I think that's really a really dangerous mindset to like push on, especially like because a lot of the people who read those books are going to be teenage girls, and they're going to start having those expectations for their own relationships. They're going to be like, one day I'm going to meet the perfect guy. I'm going to know he's the one immediately. We're going to have this strong, everlasting relationship. It's never going to end. We're going to be perfect for each other. And that's super dangerous because there's going to be men in the world, and not just men, there's going to be people in the world that are going to take advantage of people with that mindset
Mm-hmm.
and there are terrible people in the world. Don't
Yeah.
make things easier for them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big consequence. So like, yeah, to any authors out there, be mindful of what you're writing. Like definitely be mindful of what you're writing. And I think going back into the conversation of like how do we fix this? I think on top of being patient, like actually develop the relationship. Like
Yeah.
if you want oh yeah, it's a mic
I just
static.
I
Oh,
just said yeah.
oh
Sorry.
no, oh no, oh no. Oh, there's something up with your mic now.
Oh no. Okay, there we go. I don't know
Woo!
what happened there.
What happened?
I don't know. I just
Okay. All
It's
right.
fine. It's fixed. Let's
Yeah,
keep going.
it's fixed now. Um do you think we could actually backtrack a bit?
Sure. To
Yeah.
what?
So we were talking about YA examples,
Mm-hmm.
and actually I think before we get into, the conversation of like how do we fix it, I think it'd probably be better if we backtrack by expanding on like the larger storytelling in general, so like movies, TV shows, all that stuff. Kind of like as more examples cuz it feels like, I don't know, it'd just be more expansive if we talked larger media in general cuz yeah. So we were looking at YA examples, but heteronormativity, I think, or at least the umbrella term of all the cons that come with heteronormative storytelling, is prevalent, I think, in movies, TV shows, video games, even. And let's look at that first, really, before we talk about how we can address it properly. So, um, like when it comes to like heteronormativity in, I think, movies and TV shows, like really something that like it's predominantly straight relationships.
Mhm.
So rarely do I see so rarely do I see um not just even gay relationships, but like any kind of any kind of like relationship outside of a straight sexual one. Like
Yeah.
you have like, you know, best friend dynamics and whatever, but like even then it's just so it just feels so disingenuous.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I know you want to have like a save like the Marvel stuff for a specific episode, but I think Marvel movies are particularly bad for this in that like every single at least all the ones that I've seen, there's always like the main male character who's a superhero, and that's really cool. And then he has his beautiful assistant or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and they always end up together. Or like the
Yeah.
woman that he meets or whatever. Like the first Thor movie was one that has really bugged me in, 'cause like it's just yeah, she's just there, he's there, then all of a sudden, they have feelings for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Woo!
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right though. Like the one relationship that kind of started all of it was what, Tony Stark and Pepper Potts.
Yeah, 'cause Iron Man was the first one, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So like after that it was, you know, it was Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter. Then it was, you know, then it was Ant-Man and whatever Evangeline Lilly's character was. I don't remember what her name was. Um there's
Got Thor and Natalie Portman.
yeah, there's Thor and Natalie Portman. There's Tom Holland Spider-Man and Zendaya. There's what? There's even, you know, there's Star-Lord and Gamora. There's like
Yeah.
there's such a
There's there was like a weird thing going on between the Hulk and and what's her name, Black Widow.
oh yeah, that's the one that like that one feels super heteronormative.
That one came out of nowhere
Yeah,
also.
it
And
was
I'm like,
introduced in Age of Ultron and literally there had been no chemistry. They just decided to start doing it and I'm like,
and also like I remember seeing a lot of people thought that like I mean talking about Hawkeye is a whole other thing, but a lot of people thought Hawkeye and Black Widow had really good chemistry and were expecting them to be together, but then they weren't.
the only chemistry that they had was Budapest and they never elaborated on it.
Yeah, just yeah,
That's
Marvel
literally it.
Marvel heteronormativity is a mess.
Yeah. I don't, just it's not thing like I've said it, I think I've said it before, but if I haven't then I'll say it now. Just because we're calling out all of these things doesn't mean that we don't want, you know, doesn't mean that we want straight relationships to end or
No, no,
that
no,
we
no.
want thing. Like obviously also we want a lot more, you know, LGBTQ or LGBTQIA plus relationships. Like we obviously want that. But just if you're going to write in relationships in general, don't make it heteronormative.
Just like learn how relationships work
Yeah,
and write them well.
exactly.
Stop
So
forcing the first man and woman that aren't already in a relationship together like you're like smashing Barbie dolls' faces together.
yeah, exactly. And going back quickly to YA, like it's super important to not thing. Like it's super important for two things actually. It's super important to not superimpose heteronormative relationships and also to promote more relationship dynamics in general.
Yeah.
So here comes the
Yeah.
part where where it's important that we talk about how we can address heteronormative relationships and how we can fix it or like how we can, you know, work around this. And I had said this earlier, but basically the most important thing for me is to take time with your relationships. Like take time with developing how these characters interact, how they meet, um like what are their common interests, how they like what their chemistry is, and then don't always make them fuck each other. That's not No. That's such a thing. Like I
Especially at like the first moment. Especially at like the first given opportunity, because that's such a common thing where they'll know each other for like a few days, they're kind of dancing around each other, and then all of a sudden they're like, sleeping together, and you're like, okay, that came out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's fine thing. Like it's fine building the tension a little bit. But the thing is, when fan fiction is doing it a lot better than your own books can at developing a relationship over time, I'm like, dude,
I mean,
stop
that
it.
those slow burn fics are so good though.
They are. I'm getting into slow burn, but that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, so that's my big thing. And like it's only really a big thing because personally I'm of developing things over time anyway. Like, Alex mentioned slow burn, and like seriously, take your time with things. Like for me, like I've been taking my time developing Porter and Magna, who, is my same sex um friendship slash ex relationship, I guess, because they are, best friends, but they've also dated. And it's super important for me how I portray that, because I don't ever want it to feel like just because they're same sex, if it falls under any kind, like if any of it feels rushed, or if any of it feels like it's like Porter or Magna could easily be replaced by, you know, could easily be replaced by either a guy, or, maybe it's all just falling under the same things that we've talked about, then, I've just written a heteronormative relationship, which I think is super damaging when it comes to YA, especially. And that's what I was trying to get at. Like, it's important nowadays to set good examples, especially because for like very young, impressionable kids that are picking up your work, like you don't want to set a bad example, right? Personally, I
Yeah.
don't want to. And like as much as I'm trying to make that reflective through my work, I'm hoping that more authors realize that for theirs.
Yeah. And kind of bouncing off of that, I just forgot what I was gonna say.
Like, were you gonna recommend one way for?
Yeah, well, I want to say, because I feel like we've kind of been saying this a little bit, and I kind of want to like catch myself before I say something too far. Um, is that not not every relationship has to be romantic. I
Oh
think
yeah.
and like I mean I don't just mean like obviously love a good romance when it's written well, which is not very often. Um, but like I love a good romance. We need more platonic relationships in books. We need more like familial relationships in books, in
Mm-hmm.
stories in general, not just in books. But
Yeah.
also, I feel like slut shaming is a really huge issue in
Oh yeah.
heteronormativity. And sometimes people are not going to be in a relation like a romantic relationship. Maybe they have like a purely sexual relationship, and I think that's also something that we need to get better at normalizing, is like people having like casual sex um,
Mm-hmm.
in stories, because I feel like that's something that if there's a character in a book that does that, or in a story that does that, if it's a woman, she's always slut shamed for it. Like that's something that's not normalized.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really damaging as well, because like a romantic relationship isn't going to be for everyone. Or maybe maybe like sex is fun, maybe someone just wants to hook up with someone, and if
Yeah.
there's a situation that works for that character, for that person, then I think that should also be normalized.
Yeah. So I
And
guess.
also, And also, to jump on that and go the opposite direction, not everyone wants to have sex. So if
Yeah.
you have a romantic relationship that there's no sex in, that is also valid, and that is also something that should be normalized.
Mm-hmm. So I guess to kind of jump off a point you made earlier in like how many different kinds of storytelling there is, like that's another huge one for me. Like that is super important. There are so many different ways to tell stories nowadays that like through the main plots, subplots, character arcs, individual developments in general, you don't always need to incorporate like sex and romance. Like you really don't. One of my favorite stories of all time isn't even thing. It's not even like it's a video game, and that's God of War 2018. The relationship there is between a father and son, and that is a compelling narrative across what, like, it's 20-30 hours. That's, for some people, for some people that's a whole series worth of books. Like, how then could
Mhm.
they have done such a good job comparing, how then could they have told such a good story without even mentioning, any kind of sex or romance, because there didn't need to be one. Like, you had a female main character, but there wasn't any kind of, like, there weren't any hints of, flirting, any kind of intimacy, because that wasn't the point, and it was a better story because of it.
Yeah.
Like, there's
Yeah,
so
and
many thing, like, with, and that's just God of War, right? With Horizon Zero, and I'm talking about video game stories specifically, but with Horizon Zero Dawn, the main character Aloy, there is no thing, there isn't any kind of intimate relationship, kind of, or like any, I guess, like, romantic relationships that this character has. She's so focused on her goals, and is so curious but so brave at the same time, that is a much better impressionable, like, that is a much better influential character than some, than a YA character that just that's just fallen or falling for some other, like, for some other character in the book, right, out of nowhere, like that. I know that happens, but the thing is, it doesn't have to happen if you're setting the example, right? Like,
yeah.
I'd much rather, like, introduce my daughter to Horizon Zero Dawn faster than Throne of Glass. I don't mean that
Wow.
insultingly, Sarah J. Maas. Remember, I love you. I love your work, and we're just joking.
I mean, the thing is you can like something and still criticize it.
Exactly.
Yeah, the other thing that I want to say, that I think heteronormative relationships and stories do that is really damaging, is they, because we've been talking about like different forms of relationships. Another thing that they do is they make people think of like romantic and sexual relationships as the most important relationship in
Mm,
someone's life, and as a result, we uh, don't get enough focus on other kinds of relationships, like platonic relationships and familial relationships and that kind of stuff,
mm-hmm.
in my opinion, should be equally as, if not more important than like a romantic relationship that started a week ago.
Yeah. Like, I've said this for, like, to go off of that, I've said this for, I think, in an episode with Jessica, and I think I've mentioned it with you too, Alex. Like, romantic subplots, or like romantic subplots in general, are the bane of my existence, because there is so much happening, especially when there's, like, fantasy involved in your story. There is so much happening that the character has to involve with, that, like, like, why you gotta think, why you gotta deal with all the anxiety, and, like, why you have to, like, why do you have to add on a lot of unnecessary tension into the story when your character's already trying to save the world? And I know that that's such a small thing, but, like, on the grander scope of things, eh, you can easily not do it, or at least you can save it
Yeah.
for later, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and like the thing is, like, I get that sometimes relationships just happen even in the midst of all that kind of stuff. But like, I mean, if we want to go back to Throne of Glass for this, she's literally fighting like uh, I don't remember what those things are called, like the weird demons that are basically aliens or
The
whatever.
Valg.
Yeah, those guys. They're like these like extra dimensional creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And she has what, like, four love interests in across all the books.
Yeah, and that's just Throne of Glass. Like, with, with the City of Bones, there's monsters. With the Shatter Me series, there's a whole revolution. With the Hunger Games, there's a whole oppressive government. With the Maze Runner, there's, like, yeah, with Maze Runner, there's, like, the whole maze. Apparently, there are so many
Well,
amazing
with
things that
the Maze Runner, it's the apocalypse. But yeah,
yeah, there are so many amazing things that authors have put in, and suddenly they're focusing on the on a romantic relationship as some kind of tension, and I'm like, stop it.
yeah. To be fair, I don't know if we can really include Hunger Games in that situation because I feel like the like romance actually says something in those books. Um,
Mm-hmm. Oh,
but like,
I wasn't saying it like that. I'm just saying like as an example of like how much or like
yeah,
the scope of the worlds that
there,
most books are
yeah,
going through, right? Like,
there's so much going on, like, and like again, like I get sometimes relationships just happen in those scenarios, or like, or at the very least, people start developing feelings. And this is another thing that I don't think books ever really address. But just because someone has like feelings for someone doesn't necessarily mean that they want to pursue a relationship with them.
mm-hmm.
Like if you're in a situation like that where you're fighting to save the world and you're like, "Oh no, I've developed feelings for this person that I'm working with, but we don't have time to make this work." People might just like ignore them and push them aside and deal with them at a more convenient time. And I think we never, like almost never see that in stories
Mm-hmm.
because people are always just like, oh, these two characters have feelings. Obviously, they're going to get together as soon as possible.
Yeah. And I think then even too, like it go like I had mentioned this earlier on how a lot of YA is obviously tailored towards young impressionable teenagers, which I
Hmm.
think we need to stop doing that. Or at the very least we just need to go back and tailor like appeal to them with more interesting stories. Like at the like ultimately there's so many more relationships that people have aside from romantic ones. And the fact that through movies and through books that so many teenagers are wanting relationships, I think like that's pretty damaging. Like it's what it's been
I
the
don't want to
focus
like
of like
call I don't want to like call anyone out, but I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day about like wanting to be in a relationship so desperately, and I'm like we're in our early 20s. Like there's
mm-hmm.
time, and this is another thing that heteronormative relationships and books do, especially in YA, is that like a lot of the characters that you meet are teenagers or like again in their early 20s. Like
Oh my god, yeah, I think I know where you're going,
most of
yeah.
the characters in YA books are younger than I am, which feels weird to say, but that's how aging works. Um, but like, but like, then they meet, like, again, if we go back to Throne of Glass, where she has this whole mate system, which I don't even want to go off about because, ugh. Um, but like, but like, she meets her soulmate at how old is she? Like 20?
19.
She's 19. She's 19 and she meets her soulmate, the one person who's perfect for her and she's going to be with for the rest of her life. You know how many people actually stay with the person that they fall in love with at 19?
Yeah,
That's
that's fair.
so damaging. That's so damaging to so many people because, people get to like 25 and they're like, oh, I'm too old. I'm never going to find the one person who's perfect for me. And I think that's another thing that we need to do. Like, I know why novels tend to focus on like, young adults because that's who it's written about.
Mm-hmm.
But we need more examples of people finding love later in life. And we need more examples of relationships that don't work out.
Yeah. So I think ultimately that's the biggest problem that YA or that YA that heteronormativity pushes in is that if like is that relationships are an all or nothing, or at
Yeah,
least romantic relationships are an all or nothing, which like you said is super damaging. Like you
so
can't
bad.
you can't expect to fall in love with someone at 19 and then suddenly like live with them for the rest of your life. Like that has happened before. There are exceptions, but largely people change over time. And that's something that I don't think a lot of stories in general kind of focus on. Like
Yeah.
obviously, like there's the whole plot and stuff that the characters have to adhere to, but in real life, which where there are real people that these stories are going towards, the impression that you have as an author is imperative to how they perceive things. And this is towards like influencers, celebrities in general. Like, your word matters, and if you're not setting a good word, then you're not gonna have, or then you're setting a bad example for a whole bunch of people, right? It's super
Yeah.
important for not just fans of Sarah J. Maas to be aware of this. And like I said, and like Alex has said, you can enjoy the books, but don't be afraid to be critical of her work. And that goes for everyone. Like, it goes for us even when we become authors. But basically, be aware of these things. Like, be aware that heteronormative relationships are very, very, very fictitious. I think more so
Yeah.
than
And yeah,
more so than any
I've
other kind of
seen
relationship.
I've Yeah. Like I've seen like queer authors like write things about this where they've been like when I was writing this story out of habit I was just like, "Oh yeah, there's the girl and the guy and they're going to end up together." And then realized that I didn't have to do that and the only reason I was doing that was because of like heteronormative norms. And I've done that too. Like in The Diamond Dagger originally, and I did have like a male love interest who she would end up with and then I kind of got older and I'm like, but she wouldn't. That doesn't like they don't make sense as a
Mm-hmm.
couple. I was just doing it because I felt that was what was expected of me.
Yeah. And if we're gonna quickly touch on our old works, like Xeno for me has almost always started with Porter and Magna falling for each other. But the thing is, their relationship has changed so much, really. Like, it hasn't, like, the main focus from the original books and or like from the original draft was that, they were supportive of each other as best friends, obviously, but there was still a lot of like very but there was still some sexual intimacy there, which I've I don't want to say I've completely written out of the current iteration that I have, but the thing is, it's not the main focus.
Hmm.
Like, I don't want to paint a picture that, for especially because they are a same sex relationship. It is super important that of how I portray the relationship,
Yeah.
right? Because I want to make sure that I'm setting a good example for girls of their age and girls younger than them, right?
Hmm.
So, like, it's important for me to start understanding how a lot of heteronormative storytelling like works and how I cannot do it, because if I impose heteronormative tropes and any kind of association with that into a same-sex relationship, then that'll be damning on me. And if
Yeah.
nothing else, if no one notices, which I doubt, but I will forever have to live with that. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
basically, I guess as a final note to all authors out there, there's nothing wrong with writing straight relationships. There's also a lot of benefit to writing different kinds of straight relationships. And there's
Yeah.
also, in our current climate, it is very, very important to start writing more diverse, either same sex or ace relationships or everything like that. Like,
Hmm.
tap into that. And if you aren't aware of where to start, ask people.
Actually,
Because,
can I touch on something you said really quick before you wrap this up?
yeah, go ahead.
You were talking about like different kinds of relationships and different kinds of straight relationships, and I want to kind of go back to Dorian and Manon for a second,
Okay.
because a big part of my issue with how they were portrayed, up to the point that I finished in those books, was that I felt like um, that Sarah J. Maas kind of twisted their personalities to fit a certain narrative. Like I said, like we've talked about Manon like a lot
Mm-hmm.
here before, and how she's got those dom energy. She's a top, and I
Oh
can't be
yeah.
convinced otherwise.
Oh yeah.
Um,
She
and
will absolutely step on my throat, and I'd
she
smile.
listen, Manon's a top, and there's nothing wrong with
Absolutely.
that. And I feel like a big part of my issue with like their first sexual encounter was that I felt like their personalities were kind of switched so that Dorian as the man was the dominant one in the relationship and Manon as the woman was like the submissive one. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that didn't make sense for them. So let women be the dominant ones in the relationship.
Yep.
That's
Seconded.
all I have to say.
Yeah. Just absolutely. I absolutely agree. Just let women be badasses.
Yeah, because
Like,
that's another really big issue in heteronormative relationships that we haven't even touched on really is that it forces the like male and female characters into very specific roles where the man is the dominant one who like takes control of the situation and the woman is always the submissive one who lets him do that. And I
mm-hmm.
feel like that's I mean, first of all, I think that's really damaging in general
Oh yeah.
unless that's like your thing and that's what you're really into, then go for it. But that's not going to be everyone's thing, and we need to stop pushing that as something that everyone enjoys because it's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, as we're wrapping up, like keep that into account, everybody. Like diversify your relationships. Make sure that, um, I guess just make sure that romantic relationships are developed properly. Like you can have romantic relationships, just develop them properly and over time. And I think most importantly, to end on a kind of an anecdote, I guess, we're over thing. Like we are in a climate where saving the princess from another castle is completely gone. We shouldn't keep doing that as a storytelling trope, and we should start moving away from that. We don't always need knights in shining armor anymore. We don't need the vulnerable princess needing saving from a dragon. We don't need that. There are so many different ways to tell a story, and it's important for all of us, especially for people younger than us, to know what they are. So, I guess with all that being said, thank you everyone for tuning in to, I guess, a pretty like discussion heavy episode. They're all discussion heavy, but like there were very few jokes that I can
Because
recall.
Gabe's not here.
Even then, you and I banter a lot.
That's true. That's true. Listen,
Yeah.
this is a subject I'm very passionate about.
Yeah. And if even, who knows, maybe we could even do a follow up on like queer baiting, because yeah, I want to talk
Please.
about that too. So anyway, with all this being said, thanks so much everyone for tuning in. To start plugging, you can find our social media below in the description. We, as of this episode, we have an Instagram, a Twitter, a Twitch channel, and as of today, and this is probably going to be dated, but as of today, we now have a second YouTube channel where all of our stream VODs go to. So if you missed if you missed our stream live from Twitch, you can just easily hop onto the InkGuild streams where you'll find, where you'll find everything minus the chat, so you won't get to see the banter that Alex and I go through. Aside from that, you can find all of us individually under as part of the guild. So you can find Alex at Whimsical Empyrean. You can find me at Daniel Cordero, as well as everyone else who's spoken on the podcasts. Our descriptions are all, are like the music we use, like the people who contribute to these, like thank you all to them. I don't think I've said that really enough, but like, yeah, thanks for all the help, you guys. Thanks to Gabe for the consistently amazing thumbnails. Thanks to Georgia for the channel art. And I guess as a final send off, why don't we just shit on Manon and Dorian some more?
God. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I think I've said pretty much everything I want to say about it, except that I'm a diehard Matt and lead shipper, and also low-key a diehard Dorian Kale shipper. So
I don't ship Kale with anyone. I mean,
that's also fair.
to be honest, like my love for Kale has kind of, I don't want to say soured, it's just kind of cooled ever since Queen of Shadows. He's kind of had a good redemption arc
Ever
with,
since Sarah J. Maas ruined him.
pretty much. Like I like what she did with Irene, or as I always say, Yeren. That just sounds nice.
Irene.
Yeah, it's Irene.
Irene.
Yeah, I know. It's just my way of making these characters sound a little nicer. So
Fair
yeah,
enough.
there's my secret. I say Sarah J. Maas's names wrong
On purpose.
on purpose. So yeah, instead of
It's
Irene, it's
fine. It's fine.
yeah.
I say her country names wrong on purpose because I think her country names are really stupid.
But yeah, anyway, so I guess we're just going. I guess like it's not even just about Manon and Dorian. We're just talking more about Throne of Glass. But yeah,
Nehemia deserved better.
Nehemia did deserve better. It was the second fucking book. Oh
And
my god.
it was also it's like a super common, super racist trope as well. So
Yeah.
write characters of color better, Sarah J. Maas.
I'm hoping that with her upcoming release, A Court of Silver Flames, that might be better, but it's part of A Court of Thorns and Roses, so I'm
not
not.
gonna read that book.
I
can't stand more Court of Thorn and Roses. I can't stand those books. They make me so mad.
I'm not gonna. I don't think I'm gonna read it anytime soon. And if I'm ever really gonna read it, I'm probably just gonna watch Read with Cindy read it, because Read with Cindy has made a very entertaining showcase of how those books are interesting, to say the least. Because like, man, I can't believe we haven't talked about A Court of Thorns and Roses.
We can talk about them, not right now because I really want to eat dinner, but like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah,
fuck. How have we not roasted A Court of Thorns and Roses?
Because that's not even heteronormative relationships. That is abusive relationships. Oops, I said it.
Oh. Risky. You had mentioned a long time, like you had mentioned a while ago, that like it was basically like porn without plot. And the more that I see, like the more that I kind of glimpse into A Court of Thorns and Roses, I'm kind of feeling it that way. I'm kind of feeling it's that way.
We need to talk about A Court of Frost and Starlight at some point.
Oh my god, I've heard about I've heard about the fourth one. It's a novella where nothing happens, apparently, right?
Basically, but there's some really questionable sex scenes in it that we definitely need to talk about at some point.
When has A Court of Thorns and Roses not had questionable sex scenes?
I mean, like, fair, but like, oh
at
my god.
Yeah, at least with Throne of Glass, like the sex scenes were pretty. The sex scenes were pretty. I like the sex scenes.
Like, I mean, do we need to talk about them fucking on a beach for 5 hours?
I mean, at least Rowan and Aylin's relationship had been developed properly.
That is true. That is fair.
Like they had been
also on a beach, Dean, a beach with sand for 5 hours.
Okay.
Like talk about first of all, ouch. Second of all, setting unrealistic standards for sex.
Yeah, it's basically like kissing in the rain. That's just inconvenient. It probably makes for a nice shot, but like fuck, that's as if Manon and Dorian's sex scene was any better. It was bordering BDSM.
They were just like in a little tiny room on a ship, and she's like hardly wearing any clothes and is all chained up, and he comes in and starts using his like magic hands, and by which I mean not like his hands are magical, but he literally has like magic hands that extend from his body to rub on her, and I'm just like, this is very uncomfortable.
Yeah. I still love the books.
You're allowed to love the books.
Yeah.
I'm only going to judge you a little bit.
Thank you. All right.
Anyway.
All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I guess if you were missing the jokes, there you go. So, yeah. Thanks for tuning in. Oh my god. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Have a good night. You're not going to say bye? No? Okay. There are people rooting for you now.